This video will explore the global refugee crisis and explain some particularities of Australia in reference to the bigger picture. There are many reasons why people become refugees, and refugees come from many countries. However, conflict in the Middle East has been a driving force of migration, with Syria, Afghanistan and Iraq being three countries with particularly high numbers of people leaving. Eritrea is a country in Africa with high levels of people fleeing. It is a country on the Human Rights Watch list because of its forced conscription to the military. There are no elections in Eritrea and no law or independent media. People can be arrested arbitrarily and suffer harsh conditions in prison. Some people leave their country because of poverty, and this is the case in countries like Kosovo in Europe. Many of these refugees seek asylum in other countries in Europe. Of all the European countries, Germany had the most applications for asylum in 2015, and in 2016 over 700,000 people applied for protection in Germany. Greece, Italy and Hungary have faced significant issues in this crisis, as these are the countries where many of the refugees first arrive. Many of these migrants arrive in Europe by sea. Over 1 million people are thought to have entered Europe by sea in 2015. This is a dangerous journey, and boats are often overloaded with people. In 2015, 3,770 people reportedly died crossing the Mediterranean Sea. The picture on the right of the screen shows Barış Yazgi, a Kurdish violinist who drowned in April 2017 whilst trying to cross the Aegean Sea when the boat he was in sank. When his body was found, he was still holding his violin. You may also have seen the distressing image I'm about to put up from 2015 of the young boy from Syria who drowned when the boat he was on capsized off the coast of Turkey. The Refugee Council of Australia defines refugees as people who are forced to leave their homes for many reasons, including conflict and violence. A migrant differs from a refugee because a migrant leaves their home in search of a better life and is able to return to their home country, like Dr. Lynch. Refugees, on the other hand, are forced to leave their country for safety. Their major concern is the protection of their human rights, even though they may not express it in those terms. A refugee does not move for economic reasons, as a migrant does. By its legal definition, an asylum seeker is not the same as a refugee. An asylum seeker is not yet a refugee, but they have sought protection as a refugee in a new country, but their application has not yet been processed. Whilst this is the case legally in Australia, this is not the definition in international law, which recognises someone as a refugee whether or not their application has been processed. The picture on your screen was taken at a protest in Melbourne in 2011, and protests have continued since then in Australia in support of refugees. In 1958, the Australia Migration Act declared that all unlawful migrants to Australia be detained. This policy was put into practice in 1992, and subsequent governments maintained that practice. This includes people who breach their visa conditions or outstay the time frame of their visa. The detention of migrants is not meant to be punishing, but an awaiting of administrative processing. The Refugee Council of Australia argues that considerable harm has been caused to vulnerable people who are seeking protection, as asylum seekers are detained regardless of whether they pose health or security risks to the community. Under law, an unlawful immigrant can be detained indefinitely in Australia. In February 2017, there were more than 3,000 people in Australian detention centres, both within Australia and offshore. Of these, 267 are children. Australia's population grows by over 200,000 people each year due to migration. In the 2012-13 financial year, there were over 25,000 people who arrived in Australia by boat. But there are no known boat arrivals to have happened since that year. Australia intercepts boats and returns them to their country of origin. This is known as Australia's turn back policy, which came into force under a coalition government. Australia has a caveat in the policy which states that boats can only be turned back where it is safe to do so, and not to return people to a place where their life or freedom would be threatened.